In 1979, deep under the deserts of New Mexico, a secret war broke out. 82 people, scientists, soldiers, civilians, vanished in a single night. The government called it a rumor, but insiders whisper another name: Dulce Base. A place where humans weren't the ones running experiments. They were the test subjects. Bodies dissected, hybrids created, tanks filled with people begging for help. Some say it's science fiction, but eyewitnesses swear it was real. What really happened in the Dulce War? And why has no one survived to tell the story? This isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's a nightmare buried in American soil. If you want to know the truths they don't want you to hear, subscribe now to Chuyen Toi Nay. Every night, we uncover a new mystery. When most Americans hear whispers of secret bases, one name dominates the imagination: Area 51. It's the place of flying saucers, reverse-engineered craft, and rumors of alien autopsies hidden in hangars deep in the Nevada desert. But Area 51 is only the surface story, the sanitized version, the distraction. The real nightmare, according to whistleblowers and witnesses, is not Nevada. It's New Mexico, a small, quiet town near the Jicarilla Apache Reservation called Dulce. Unlike Area 51, where humans supposedly experimented on alien corpses, Dulce is said to be the mirror image of that myth. At Dulce, the aliens are not the specimens. They are the scientists, and we, humans, are the test subjects. The rumors are not of spacecraft hidden in warehouses, but of 7 subterranean levels carved under Archuleta Mesa. On the surface, the desert looks ordinary: dust, shrubs, the silence of New Mexico wind. But under that mesa, the story goes, lies a sprawling complex where nightmares wear lab coats, a place where men and women are stripped of identity, reduced to raw material for experiments, hybrids, genetic mutilations. They call one level Nightmare Hall. That alone tells you what kind of place it is. The first seeds of this horror began not with alien ships, but with something more grounded and more grotesque: cattle. In the mid-1970s, State Trooper Gabe Valdez responded to a call on a lonely stretch of road. What he found was not the usual roadkill: a cow surgically mutilated, its organs removed with precision no predator could achieve. No blood, no tracks, and inside the carcass, something worse: a fetus, but not a calf, not even close. Valdez described it as a hybrid, part human, part monkey, part frog. Imagine standing in the New Mexico sun, looking into the belly of a cow and seeing something that should not exist staring back at you. Valdez could have been lying. He could have been hallucinating. Or he really saw something that rewrites the limits of biology. And the strangest part, scattered around the scene were glow sticks, radar chaff, even gas masks, tools no wolf or coyote would ever leave behind. Government involvement. At first it sounded like madness, but strange cattle mutilations kept piling up across the region. Linda Moulton Howe, an investigative journalist, won an Emmy for her documentary A Strange Harvest, connecting the dots between animal mutilations and something far darker. The whispers refused to die. Then came the real fuel to the fire: the claims of whistleblowers. Men who said they had worked there, men who swore the government had signed a treaty long before Valdez ever looked into that mutilated cow. The story starts in 1954. President Dwight Eisenhower is in Palm Springs when, according to official reports, he disappears for a night due to a dental emergency. But the so-called dentist worked out of Edwards Air Force Base at midnight. Even at the time, the story reeked of fabrication. What really happened, according to insiders like former Pentagon consultant Timothy Good, is that Eisenhower was flown to New Mexico to meet with visitors, not foreign dignitaries, aliens. Eyewitnesses described 2 races present: the tall, fair-skinned Nordics and the infamous Greys. And Eisenhower, they claim, didn't just shake hands, he signed. The agreement would become known as the Grenada Treaty. Its terms were simple, brutal, and unthinkable. In exchange for alien technology, the kind of advancement that could change warfare, medicine, even space travel. The United States government would allow the aliens to experiment on humans and animals. The Greys would take a small percentage of the population. The abductees would be returned, their memories altered, the government would look away, and in return, America would leap decades ahead in technology. Fiber optics, integrated circuits, lasers. Were they really invented or were they handed down? That's the unspoken question. If you put yourself in Eisenhower's position, in the middle of the Cold War, staring down the Soviet threat, the choice becomes almost understandable. Imagine meeting beings who can cross galaxies, who can shut down your defenses with a glance, and that tell you, we were here before you. The land is ours. You can resist and be erased, or cooperate and survive. History records that Eisenhower was a pragmatist, but no record exists of what he thought in that room. Only the whispers remain. And the base, they say, was built to house the bargain. Dulce. The descriptions are chilling in their detail. Visitors to Dulce, if they were allowed past the upper levels, would undergo retina scans, weight checks, surveillance at every step. Security guards wore coveralls like pilots, armed with weapons designed to subdue not just humans but aliens as well. Strange symbols lined the walls, languages of races not from Earth. Elevators operated not on cables but on magnetic fields. There were over 3,000 cameras watching every corridor, and beneath it all, the laboratories, each floor descending deeper into horror. Level 4, experiments in mind control, dream manipulation, telepathy. Level 5, autopsies, dissections, the kind of grotesque biology that made cattle mutilations look tame. Level 6, the infamous Nightmare Hall, where row upon row of tanks held human beings and hybrids suspended in fluids. Some were awake, some begged for help. All were trapped in an experiment with no purpose we could understand. Level 7 was said to hold the storage, thousands of humans frozen in cryogenic units, waiting for something. No one outside the base ever knew what. If this sounds like science fiction, remember, the people who told these stories paid a price. Paul Benowitz, the electronic specialist who intercepted strange transmissions near Dulce, was driven into madness, institutionalized, his life ruined. Thomas Costello, the security officer who smuggled out what became known as the Dulce Papers, vanished from the grid, his very existence disputed. Phil Schneider, the geologist who claimed to have fought in a gun battle against aliens in Dulce, was found dead with a wire around his neck. Officially suicide, unofficially assassination. The government discredited them all. But why discredit if there was nothing to hide? And then came 1979, the year of the Dulce War, a violent conflict between human workers and alien overlords. Details differ depending on who you ask. Some say it began when human security forces tried to restrict alien experiments. Others say it was a botched weapons test. Schneider claimed he pulled a gun on a Grey and started a firefight. Whatever the spark, the result was the same: chaos. Shots fired in corridors deep beneath the mesa, blood spilled in sterile labs, 82 people dead, scientists, soldiers, workers. Their families never received answers. Their names never appeared on casualty lists. Officially, the war never happened. Unofficially, it is the darkest chapter in the history of human-alien contact. And yet, despite the testimonies, despite the details, despite the lives destroyed, skeptics dismiss it as hoax, fabrication, delusion. They point out the lack of hard evidence, the recycled photographs, the contradictions in witness accounts. But the rumors persist. Because the mutilated cattle were real, the strange lights in New Mexico skies are still seen today. The people of Dulce whisper of UFOs over Archuleta Mesa, of helicopters without markings, of sounds rumbling underground at night. Something is there. Something has always been there. So the question remains, is Dulce Base a myth, a conspiracy spun from Cold War paranoia and UFO obsession? Or is it the hidden counterpart to Area 51, the place where America traded its humanity for technology? In the lonely deserts of New Mexico, the silence is broken not by the hum of traffic or the chatter of towns, but by something stranger. In the mid-1970s, cattle ranchers began reporting an epidemic that defied all explanation. Their herds were being slaughtered in ways no predator, no disease, and no human could replicate. Corpses were found with organs surgically removed, flesh sliced with precision and blood drained completely, leaving the animals pale and hollow as if their life force itself had been extracted. Among the first to confront this nightmare was State Trooper Gabe Valdez, a man accustomed to grisly accidents and violent crimes. Valdez thought he had seen everything until he arrived at one scene on a desolate night. The carcass of a cow lay torn open, its insides exposed, with a precision scalpel could envy. But what truly froze him was what he found inside. The fetus. Not a calf, not any animal known to Earth. Its shape was wrong. Limbs too short, skin pale, a grotesque mixture of human, monkey, and frog, as though evolution itself had been spliced together in a grotesque parody of life. Valdez was not hallucinating. He photographed what he saw, logged the evidence, and searched for a rational answer. Predators don't leave behind chemical glow sticks. Predators don't scatter radar chaff across the desert. Predators don't drop gas masks near mutilated cattle. These were the artifacts found at the scene. Military tools, government tools, proof that something organized was orchestrating the horror. But the question was, why? The mutilations spread across New Mexico and into neighboring states, each case eerily similar. Clean cuts through thick hide, reproductive organs removed, tongues sliced with surgical exactness, entire bodies drained of blood. There were no tracks, no predators, no sounds in the night except sometimes the low hum of engines above. Witnesses described strange lights dancing silently across the sky, beams that cut through darkness, craft that hovered and vanished without sound. Ranchers buried their cattle quickly, fearful not just of financial ruin but of something far darker walking their land. Journalist Linda Moulton Howe began connecting the dots. In her Emmy-winning documentary A Strange Harvest, she revealed patterns no one could ignore. The mutilations were not random. They followed flight paths, military zones, areas with reported UFO sightings, and always they were accompanied by silence, as though the desert itself conspired to hide the truth. Howe suggested what ranchers already whispered. The mutilations were not the work of wild animals or sadistic humans. They were experiments, tests, a harvest. Valdez pushed further, risking reputation and career. His reports suggested collusion between something inhuman and something human. The mutilations were too precise for animals, too brazen for pranksters, too consistent for coincidence. And the debris, glow sticks, masks, chaff, pointed toward government hands. Valdez suspected a joint operation. But if the government was involved, who were they working with? That was the question that drove the whispers underground, from coffee shops to late-night radios, from ranchers to conspiracy theorists. The mutilations might have been dismissed as madness if not for the sheer volume. Hundreds of cattle across states, all killed the same way, all stripped of organs with surgical skill. Farmers filed insurance claims, police filed reports. But the official explanation was silence. No government agency acknowledged the epidemic. No scientists stepped forward to analyze the remains. The ranchers were left alone with empty pastures, financial losses, and gnawing fear. And yet, behind the silence, the rumors grew. People said the cattle were test subjects, their organs harvested for genetic research, their blood examined for something alien. Some believed the cows were a stand-in for humans, a biological proxy, a way for outsiders to study Earth life without immediate detection. Others believed the animals were simply practice, preludes to something worse. Valdez's discovery of the hybrid fetus inside the mutilated cow became the spark that ignited a firestorm of speculation. If the mutilations were experiments, Then what were they building? Hybrids of animal and man? New species for labor, for war, for something unimaginable? Whatever the truth, the fetus was a warning, a glimpse into a laboratory no one could see, a laboratory rumored to exist beneath Archuleta Mesa, a place soon to be named with fear, Dulce. The mutilations, the hybrid fetus, the strange debris, all of it formed the prologue to a nightmare larger than Valdez could have guessed. For in the coming years, whistleblowers would emerge claiming not just to know the origin of these horrors, but to have walked the halls where they were born. The Dulce Base, they said, was real, and the mutilations were only the surface scratches of its experiments. The cattle were only the beginning. In February 1954, the President of the United States vanished. Officially, Dwight Eisenhower was on vacation in Palm Springs when he suddenly developed a dental emergency that required immediate attention. His aides explained that he was rushed to a local dentist near midnight. The story sounded harmless, almost laughable, but there was a problem. No dentist could be found. No appointment was recorded. No credible account existed of the president being in a dental chair that night. What really happened has fueled one of the darkest rumors in American history. Eisenhower was not at a dentist. He was at an airbase in New Mexico meeting beings that were not human. According to former consultants, military insiders, and leaked testimonies, Eisenhower was spirited away under heavy guard to Edwards Air Force Base. There, in a hangar sealed from the world, he met representatives of two alien races. One was described as tall, blonde, and eerily human-like, later called the Nordics. The other was short, gray-skinned, with black eyes that seemed to swallow light. These were the Greys. The meeting did not end with polite exchanges or photographs. It ended with a treaty, the Granada Treaty. The Greys offered technology beyond imagination, propulsion systems that could defy gravity, materials stronger than steel but lighter than air, advances in medicine, energy, and weaponry. In return, they demanded something shocking: access. Access to our land, our cattle, and most horrifying of all, to us. The treaty permitted limited abductions of humans for the purpose of research and experimentation. Victims would be returned with memories erased. The number taken would be small enough to avoid notice, in theory. Eisenhower agreed. Some say he had no choice. The Cold War was at its height. The Soviet Union loomed as an existential threat. Any edge in technology was priceless. And beyond that, the aliens claimed something terrifying. They said they had been here long before us. They were descended from an ancient reptilian species that had inhabited Earth for millennia. By their logic, we were the intruders. If it came down to rights, they had more than we did. Imagine being in Eisenhower's shoes. You are the leader of the free world. You're confronted with beings whose very existence upends everything you thought you knew. They demonstrate power beyond comprehension. They tell you they want to experiment on a fraction of your people in exchange for knowledge that could keep your nation alive. And they insist the land is theirs by birthright. Refuse, and you risk confrontation with a force you cannot defeat. Accept, and you betray your citizens while buying time. Eisenhower signed. With his signature, the path was set. Deep underground facilities began to rise in secret, places where humans and aliens would work side by side. The first and most infamous would be carved beneath Archuleta Mesa. Dulce Base. Levels descending into nightmare. Security that grew more intense the deeper you went. Guards armed with weapons capable of disabling both man and alien. Retina scans and weight sensors monitoring every move. Elevators running on magnetic systems beyond anything engineers understood. At the surface, the base appeared like any other military installation. Underground, it was something else. Entire floors dedicated to laboratories where biology and physics blurred. At first, the arrangement seemed like a partnership. Aliens offered technology, humans provided resources. Together, they built systems that defied human science. But the bargain came at a price. The mutilations that plagued New Mexico ranches in the 70s were not random. They were part of the deal. Cattle offered genetic material, blood, organs, a rehearsal for something far more sinister. Humans abducted in the night carried implants that transmitted signals Paul Benowitz would later intercept on his receivers. Memories erased, lives disrupted, their stories dismissed as fantasy. But the treaty made it legal. In the eyes of those who signed it, these were not crimes, they were agreements. The Granada Treaty was supposed to limit abductions to a manageable number, but according to later testimony, the aliens broke their word. Abductions multiplied, reports surged, experiments grew darker, and the government, bound by secrecy and fear of exposure, did nothing. The people were never told. Decades later, whistleblowers described what they saw: cold storage of human bodies, tanks filled with hybrids in various stages of development, entire levels devoted to mind control, telepathy, and genetic engineering. It was not collaboration. It was subjugation. The aliens dictated the rules. The government complied, and the people became resources. Eisenhower's dental appointment had been the cover story for a surrender. The Granada Treaty marked the beginning of an alliance too monstrous to admit, too dangerous to reject. Some researchers suggest Eisenhower regretted the decision in his later years, warning in his farewell address about the military-industrial complex that had grown beyond control. Perhaps he knew that what began as a treaty had evolved into a prison. Perhaps he realized that in seeking power to defend his nation, he had delivered it into the hands of something far worse than the Soviets. The Dulce Base became the center of whispers because it was the physical proof of that pact. Every mutilated cow, every abducted human, every hybrid fetus found in a womb was a receipt from the bargain struck in 1954. The Granada Treaty was not a myth. It was the foundation of a hidden empire where humans were no longer the top of the chain. And so the question remains: did Eisenhower protect humanity, or did he sell it? The answer may still lie buried beneath the mesa. The first thing anyone says about Dulce Base is that it is not like any military installation you have ever imagined. It is not a row of hangars in the desert or a cluster of radar dishes pointed to the sky. It is a machine built downward into the bones of the earth itself. 7 levels, each more restricted than the last, each floor a step deeper into something between science and nightmare. At the entrance, guards in coveralls patrol with weapons not issued anywhere else, flash guns designed to incapacitate both humans and extraterrestrials. Identification is not checked with a badge or a fingerprint, but with a retina scan. If you pass, you descend. The first level houses administration and security, offices, briefing rooms, personnel checkpoints. It resembles a normal base, almost boring, designed to lull you into thinking this is business as usual. But as you move down, the illusion falls apart. The second floor is housing, dormitories for staff, cafeterias, recreation areas. Here, the workers live as if it were an isolated campus, sealed away from daylight. They wear white uniforms. They are monitored constantly. Weight sensors under the floor detect their movements. Cameras track every angle. It is a place without privacy. The third floor is where technology begins to shift beyond human comprehension. Research divisions handle advanced energy systems, propulsion, metallurgy, medicine. According to reports, the equipment here is alien in origin, provided directly by the Greys. Human engineers assemble devices they barely understand, guided by beings who never explain. Elevators glide without cables, doors open without hinges, lights shine without bulbs. The infrastructure itself is alien. And yet, this is only the surface. The fourth floor is where experiments on the mind occur. Consciousness research, telepathy, dream manipulation. Test subjects are placed in chambers where signals rewire their brains. Some are taught to project thoughts, Others are broken down until they obey commands implanted in sleep. The boundaries between psychology and sorcery blur. This is where mind control projects unfold in silence, unseen by the outside world. The fifth floor takes the horror deeper. Here, alien autopsies are performed. Bodies of Greys, Nordics, and reptilian beings dissected under sterile lights. But also human corpses, some mutilated, some burned, some altered beyond recognition. Surgeons record every detail, searching for ways to merge biology with technology. Witnesses later called it Frankenstein science. A gallery of bodies opened like textbooks. And yet even this is not the worst. The sixth level has a name whispered with dread: Nightmare Hall. Here tanks stretch row after row, filled with liquid where figures drift half awake. Hybrids, some human, some not. Limbs too long, eyes too large, skin translucent. Officially, these were psychiatric patients volunteered for risky drug trials. In reality, they were abducted civilians, erased from memory, preserved in glass prisons. The seventh level is said to be the deepest and the most disturbing. Cold storage. Thousands of bodies, human and hybrid, preserved for study. Some are intact, others reduced to parts. Rows of containers filled with organs, fluids, tissues, cataloged like inventory in a warehouse. This is where the cattle mutilations connect. Genetic material harvested from animals and humans alike, stored for projects whose purposes remain classified even now. The structure of Dulce Base is more than architecture. It is a descent into the hierarchy of horror. Each floor reveals less humanity, more alien control. Above ground, the base pretends to be a cooperative facility. Below ground, it becomes clear who commands and who obeys. Whistleblowers who claimed to work there describe symbols carved into walls, alien languages etched beside human signs. They describe guards who looked as uneasy as the prisoners, bound by oaths of silence, powerless to question what they saw. They describe elevators that dropped without cables, powered by magnetic systems human engineers could not explain. They describe the hum of machinery that never stopped, as if the mountain itself had been turned into a living machine. And above all, they describe fear. Fear in the eyes of abducted humans trapped in tanks. Fear in the whispers of workers who dared not speak. Fear in the silence of officials who knew but pretended not to. Dulce was not simply a research facility. It was a theater of control. The aliens dictated the direction, the government facilitated, and humanity became both observer and subject. The existence of multiple alien species inside the base confirmed the scale of the operation. Short Greys from Zeta Reticuli, tall Greys from Orion, reptilian species native to Earth, and Draco reptilians from beyond, each with roles and hierarchies. The worker castes maintained systems. The supervisors oversaw experiments. Humans followed orders. In the rare moments of interaction, some humans reported that the aliens expressed curiosity, even indifference, but never empathy. To them, we were specimens. Dulce Base embodied the cost of the Granada Treaty. Technology flowed upward to the military-industrial complex, but blood and flesh flowed downward into the labs. Every abducted human, every mutilated animal, every hybrid fetus was a receipt for that bargain. The structure of the base reflected the bargain itself. The higher levels pretended to be normal. The lower levels revealed the truth. A descent from plausible deniability into undeniable nightmare. The question is not whether Dulce Base existed. The question is what still remains beneath that mesa, and whether the experiments that began there. In 1979, the silence inside Dulce Base shattered. For years, humans and aliens had shared the underground facility in uneasy cooperation. Experiments continued, abductions mounted, security tightened. But beneath the surface, tension grew. The breaking point came suddenly and violently. Whistleblowers describe it as the day the treaty collapsed. Workers in the lower levels had begun to suspect the truth. The people floating in tanks were not psychiatric volunteers. They were abducted citizens, missing persons, families torn from their lives above ground. Guards heard muffled cries, saw eyes staring through glass begging for release. Some human technicians could no longer pretend. A resistance formed quietly, made up of scientists, engineers, and low-level security staff. Their numbers were small, their weapons non-existent, but their conscience was heavy. Among them was Thomas Costello, a security officer with access to surveillance systems. He began collecting evidence, photographs, video, documents. He saw Level 6, Nightmare Hall, row after row of hybrids, tanks filled with failed experiments, half human, half something else. He saw Level 7, cold storage, bodies suspended like inventory. He realized the official story was a lie. The workers decided to act. At first, it was not war, but a leak. Documents smuggled out, whispered conversations about exposing the truth. But the aliens discovered the resistance. What followed became known as the Dulce War. Accounts vary, but the core remains the same. A violent confrontation between human workers, U.S. security forces, and alien overseers. It began on Level 6. A technician attempted to free one of the tanks, releasing a hybrid that staggered out, alive but broken. Guards intervened, shots were fired, panic erupted. Within minutes, alarms blared through the base. Reinforcements stormed the corridors. The resistance was outnumbered. Then the aliens joined. Reports claim that security teams, known as the Delta Group, moved to suppress the rebellion. They carried advanced weapons designed to kill quickly, but the aliens were more ruthless. Beams of energy cut through walls and bodies alike. Witnesses described chaos, humans caught in crossfire, tanks shattering, creatures spilling into the hallways. Costello later said it was a massacre. 82 people died, including scientists from the National Recon Group and security agents from the Delta Force. Some were torn apart by alien weapons. Others were incinerated in bursts of heat. The survivors described screams echoing through the corridors, lights flickering, smoke filling the underground chambers. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The resistance never stood a chance. Yet, the event changed everything. The Dulce War exposed the fragile alliance. Until then, the Granada Treaty had been honored in shadows. After the war, distrust spread among both sides. Rumors claim the aliens withdrew deeper underground, limiting direct. Military sealed off sections of the base. Casualties were covered up, official records erased. Families of the dead never received answers. Missing scientists were explained away as transfers or accidents. The truth was buried with them. But whispers escaped. Costello fled with stolen evidence, later releasing what became known as the Dulce Papers. Photographs, videos, documents, proof that the base was real, that the experiments were real, that the war had happened. Others spoke as well. Paul Benowitz intercepted strange transmissions. Phil Schneider claimed he was injured in a firefight with aliens during construction. Their stories diverged, but they all pointed to the same event, a violent rupture at Dulce. What makes the Dulce War so chilling is not just the violence, but the implication. It proved the humans were never in control. The treaty was a cover. The base was a laboratory owned by forces beyond us, and when humans resisted, they were eliminated. Survivors recall the aftermath. Bodies burned, corridors sealed, equipment destroyed. Some claim entire levels were shut down permanently. Others believe the experiments continued under stricter alien supervision. No one outside the base ever received confirmation. The event remained rumor, whispered by insiders, dismissed by officials. but the details repeat too consistently to be ignored. 82 dead, a massacre hidden under the desert. The Dulce War became the moment when conspiracy shifted from speculation to blood. Critics argue the stories conflict. Some say the battle began over weapons testing, others say it started during construction. Schneider claimed he lost fingers in the fight. Skeptics call him delusional. But even if details vary, the core remains. Violence, death, suppression. A secret war fought not in distant lands but beneath American soil, and like all wars, it left scars. Costello vanished, hunted or hidden. Benowitz was driven to breakdown. Schneider died mysteriously, found with a cord around his neck. Whistleblowers silenced one by one. The Dulce War did not just kill 82 people. It destroyed the lives of those who tried to speak, and yet the question lingers. If humans lost the battle, what did the aliens win? Did they secure freedom to continue experiments without resistance? Did they expand deeper, underground, into levels no human now controls? Or did the government retreat, leaving the mesa in their hands? No documents confirm. No photographs survive unchallenged, but the silence itself is damning. In the history of conspiracies, few stories end with such brutality. Most are theories, questions, suspicions. The Dulce War carries the weight of bodies. 82 souls gone without acknowledgement, their deaths denied, their families left in ignorance. That fought in silence. The Dulce War is not only about aliens. It is about control. Who holds it? Who loses it? And what happens when secrets collapse? In 1979, that collapse echoed underground. The echoes still linger. The Dulce War might have ended in silence underground, but above the surface, whispers began to spread. They came not from newspapers or officials, but from individuals who claimed to know too much. These whistleblowers painted a picture that was darker than any rumor. Their stories diverged, their credibility questioned, yet when assembled, they created a chilling mosaic. The first was Paul Benowitz, an electronics specialist living near Albuquerque. In the late 1970s, he became fascinated by reports of cattle mutilations and UFO activity around New Mexico. He set up cameras, receivers, and monitoring equipment around his home. Soon, he began capturing strange lights in the sky, objects that moved silently with impossible speed. His equipment also intercepted transmissions. At first, they sounded like static, but gradually patterns emerged. Voices, commands, data streams. To Benowitz, these were not random signals. They were communications between UFOs and something underground. He traced them to Archuleta Mesa near Dulce. When he shared his findings with the Air Force, he believed he was helping national security. Instead, his life unraveled. The Air Force fed him disinformation, twisting his discoveries into confusion, while others painted him as paranoid. He suffered breakdowns, his health collapsed, his credibility destroyed. Yet his tapes and notes remain. They speak of a presence beneath the mesa, a facility where transmissions flowed nightly. Whether true or not, his story ignited the legend. Then came Thomas Costello. Unlike Benowitz, Costello claimed to have worked inside the base itself. A security officer with clearance, he described Dulce as a 7-level complex jointly operated by humans and extraterrestrials. Each floor, he said, had a purpose. The upper levels housed security and offices. Lower levels held laboratories. Level 4 focused on mind control. Level 5 on autopsies. Level 6, Nightmare Hall, contained tanks filled with hybrids, grotesque fusions of human and alien DNA. Level 7 stored bodies in cold suspension. Costello said he witnessed humans in cages, hybrids begging for help, and experiments that defied morality. He also claimed to have smuggled out evidence, photographs, documents, video. These became the so-called Dulce Papers. Critics point out that no verifiable copy of these materials has surfaced publicly. Supporters argue that the government erased them. Costello himself vanished. Some say he fled underground, others that he was eliminated. His testimony remains contested, but its details echo other accounts. The third major voice was Phil Schneider, a geologist and engineer who claimed to have worked on black projects, constructing deep underground bases. He said he was injured in a firefight with aliens while building tunnels at Dulce. His fingers were missing, scars etched across his body. In lectures during the 1990s, he described the Dulce War, the Granada Treaty, and a network of bases across the United States connected by high-speed maglev trains. He warned of alien agendas and government complicity. 6 months after his final lecture, Schneider was found dead with a wire around his neck. Officials called it suicide. His supporters called it execution. Skeptics dismiss him as unstable, pointing to inconsistencies in his claims and a history of mental health struggles. Yet the manner of his death fueled suspicion. 3 voices, 3 versions of Dulce. Benowitz with signals, Costello with documents, Schneider with scars. Their stories differ in detail but align in theme: a base hidden beneath New Mexico, experiments on humans, a secret war, and a treaty with forces not of this world. Critics argue these men were delusional or deceived. Supporters insist they were silenced for telling the truth. The debate itself keeps the legend alive. Beyond the big 3, other whispers surfaced. Locals around Dulce reported strange lights in the sky, humming noises at night, cattle vanishing without trace. Hunters described being followed by silent craft. Residents spoke of unmarked helicopters sweeping the area. Journalists who visited reported intimidation by men in black vehicles. None of this proves a base exists, but together it fuels suspicion. The government's silence only deepens it. When residents filed reports of mutilations or UFOs, officials dismissed them as hysteria. Yet behind the scenes, agencies monitored closely. Documents later declassified show investigations into cattle deaths, though conclusions were vague. If nothing was happening, why watch so carefully? The story grows darker when combined with testimonies like that of Myrna Hansen, who under hypnosis described being abducted, taken underground, shown vats of body parts, and returned with missing time. Hypnosis is controversial, memories unreliable, yet the consistency of abduction reports across the country adds weight. People who never met describe similar details: bright lights, missing time, examinations, underground chambers. Could they all be lying? Or is there a pattern too unsettling to confront? Whistleblowers always walk a line between revelation and ruin. Benowitz ended in breakdown, Costello in disappearance, Schneider in death. Each left fragments, pieces of a puzzle that may never fit cleanly. But perhaps that is the point. If Dulce Base exists, it was never meant to be fully revealed. Its power lies in shadows, in half-truths and contradictions. Enough to terrify, never enough to confirm. Skeptics demand hard evidence. Supporters say hard evidence is exactly what gets erased. In the end, we are left with testimony, circumstantial details, and the chilling question: why do so many risk everything to tell the same story? The legend of Dulce grows not because it is proven, but because it refuses to die. Each whistleblower adds possibility. Beneath the mesa, something waits. If true, it means treaties with aliens, experiments on humans, and a secret war already fought. If false, it means brilliant disinformation campaigns designed to hide some other project. Either way, the truth is darker than comfort allows. The year was 1954, and the Cold War had placed the United States on edge. Nuclear weapons were being stockpiled, spies hunted, and fear of Soviet dominance gripped Washington. But according to the whispers that surround Dulce, Another meeting, far stranger than any summit of men, took place that year. President Dwight Eisenhower was vacationing in Palm Springs when his schedule abruptly changed. Officially, he was rushed away for a sudden dental emergency. Unofficially, the story goes that his absence had nothing to do with teeth and everything to do with an encounter not of this earth. Eisenhower's true destination, witnesses claimed, was Edwards Air Force Base, where late at night he met with beings described as Nordic aliens, tall and human-like, and later with the Greys, short, large-eyed, and emotionless. What could a sitting president possibly discuss with such entities? The answer, according to whistleblowers, was simple: technology in exchange for access. The supposed treaty that followed became known as the Granada Treaty, a document never seen, never confirmed, yet repeatedly cited by those who claim to have insider knowledge. Its terms were chilling. The aliens would provide advanced technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. In return, the government would allow them to conduct experiments on animals and on a limited number of humans, provided abductees were returned and their memories wiped. For Eisenhower and his advisors, the decision was framed as necessity. The Cold War demanded superiority. Advanced weapons, propulsion systems, medical breakthroughs, even the promise of space exploration couldn't be ignored. To refuse might mean falling behind the Soviets. To accept meant sacrificing citizens in silence. If the treaty was real, it was the ultimate Faustian bargain. Imagine the scene. A president, sworn to defend his people, confronted by beings who claimed Earth as their ancient right. The Greys, it was said, described themselves as descendants of reptilian species that had lived on this planet long before humans. If rights were measured by tenure, they had more claim than us. They needed resources, minerals, electromagnetic energy, genetic material. They offered knowledge in return. How many leaders would have the strength to refuse? The Granada Treaty allegedly opened the door for underground bases like Dulce. With government approval, or at least acquiescence, construction began under mesas and mountains, hidden from satellites, shielded by secrecy. Contractors were told they were building storage facilities. Engineers were compartmentalized, each knowing only fragments. Few understood the whole design. Alien technology guided the construction. Elevators without cables, magnetic transport, alloys unfamiliar to human science. At the surface, all appeared barren desert. Below, the architecture of another world. Skeptics dismissed the story as fantasy. Yet leaps, integrated circuits, fiber optics, lasers, stealth materials. Officially, these were human inventions, the product of brilliant minds. Unofficially, some whisper they were seeded, handed over as part of the bargain. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, a decorated officer who served on Eisenhower's National Security Council, later swore under oath that he handled alien artifacts recovered from Roswell and funneled them into private industry. He described it not as innovation, but as reverse engineering. Corso never spoke directly of the Granada Treaty, but his words hint at surrender. He wrote, "We had negotiated a kind of surrender with them. They dictated the terms because they knew what we most feared was disclosure." Disclosure. The fear that the public, if told, would panic, lose faith in government, reject authority. Better to trade silence for safety, or at least the illusion of it. If true, then every abduction story after 1954 takes on a darker light. Victims who described being examined, having samples taken, losing hours or days may not have been anomalies. They may have been authorized, statistics in a deal signed by men in suits. Families who searched for answers were met with ridicule or silence, not because nothing happened, but because everything had been permitted. The Granada Treaty is said to have limits, clauses that aliens must obey. But what leverage did humans truly have? Could any treaty bind beings who crossed galaxies? Reports suggest the Greys exceeded their quotas, abducting far more than agreed, conducting experiments not only on adults but on children. Complaints may have been lodged, but what was the consequence? Could Eisenhower punish them? Could America fight them? The imbalance of power turned the treaty into little more than a mask for capitulation. The Cold War context explains the desperation. Imagine generals comparing alien craft to Soviet bombers. One represented fear, the other, possibility. Technology promised victory, citizens became collateral. Yet the most unsettling part is not the signing itself, but the secrecy that followed. No Senate approval, no public debate, just a midnight agreement with cosmic implications. If Eisenhower truly met extraterrestrials and signed the Granada Treaty, then democracy itself was bypassed. Humanity's future was negotiated in shadows. The legend claims Dulce was among the first bases built under its authority, a joint facility where human scientists and alien entities worked side by side. Some handled technology, others biology. Experiments on animals escalated to humans. Genetic material was harvested, hybrids created. All justified as research, all hidden under the veil of national security. The cattle mutilations of the 1970s may have been a byproduct of these experiments. Blood drained, organs removed, surgical incisions. Ranchers saw only loss. The government saw data. Alien agendas advanced while officials maintained plot.
Where's the proof? There are no signed documents, no official photos, only testimonies, yet those testimonies converge on the same themes. Eisenhower vanished briefly in 1954. Witnesses saw meetings at Edwards, whistleblowers described treaties, abductees described procedures. The absence of paper may not mean absence of truth. After all, secrecy was the point. Even if the Granada Treaty was fiction, its persistence reveals something real, a deep suspicion that governments would trade citizens for power. The legend thrives because it resonates. We know governments keep secrets. We know deals are struck in darkness. The idea of a pact with extraterrestrials simply extends the logic to its extreme. And if true, the implications are staggering. It would mean humanity is not sovereign on its own planet. It would mean our leaders acknowledged that and concealed it. It would mean the experiments in Nightmare Hall were not rogue atrocities but sanctioned acts, carried out under terms agreed decades earlier. The Granada Treaty may never be proven. Documents may never surface, but the shadow it casts lingers. Each new sighting, each abduction, each mutilated cow is interpreted through its lens. The treaty explains too much, too neatly to be ignored. Was it real? Or was it cover for something else? A disinformation campaign to hide advanced military projects, a Cold War bluff, or the truth itself too frightening to admit? Whatever the answer, the story of the Granada Treaty remains central to the Dulce legend. A midnight pact, a secret surrender. The moment when the line between government and alien blurred and humanity's fate slipped quietly underground. They call it Level 6. Others call it Nightmare Hall. Deep beneath the mesa, past the security checkpoints, past the biometric scanners, past the guarded elevators, lies the floor that even seasoned personnel whispered about but dreaded to see. If Dulce Base exists, this is the place where legend and horror fuse. Testimonies from alleged insiders paint a chilling picture. Hundreds of glass tanks line the halls, each one filled with liquid and the silhouettes of living beings. Some look human, some almost human, others are unrecognizable. Shapes twitching, eyes half open, mouths moving as if to scream. Witnesses describe hybrids of human and animal, beings with elongated limbs, distorted faces, skin pallid or scaled. Some look like grotesque experiments frozen in mid-birth. Others appear awake, confused, drugged or worse, aware of their prison. The official explanation to new recruits was that these were psychiatric patients undergoing experimental treatment,
A lie convenient enough to silence questions. But according to whistleblowers, including the infamous Thomas Costello, the truth was far darker. These were abducted men, women, and children, taken without consent, subjected to genetic manipulation by alien scientists and human collaborators. Imagine walking down a corridor lined with transparent tanks, faces pressed to glass, hands reaching, bodies suspended. Some cry, some plead, some bang against the glass only to be ignored. Costello described how one day a man inside the tank mouthed words begging for help. Later, he ran a check on the man's identity through contacts on the surface. The man was indeed listed as missing. At that moment, Costello realized these were not insane patients. They were victims. Nightmare Hall allegedly housed levels of experimentation. On one side, genetic splicing, human DNA mixed with animal, reptile, or even alien material. On another, cybernetic enhancements, implants in the brain, mechanical limbs fused to flesh. Still deeper, psychic conditioning, experiments on dreams, telepathy, remote viewing, the blending of biology and technology, of consciousness and control. Why? Theories vary. Some believe the Greys were attempting to fix their own genetic decline by merging with humans. Others claim the U.S. government sought supersoldiers, engineered beings stronger, faster, obedient. Still others suggest motives beyond human comprehension, agendas that treat humanity as livestock in a cosmic farm. The most infamous rumor concerns tanks filled with dismembered body parts, vats of organs harvested from both cattle and people. Witnesses described walking into rooms where limbs floated, torsos stacked like experiments gone wrong. Frankenstein imagery, but whispered with the conviction of those who swore they saw it. At level 6, there was no dignity, no humanity, only utility. A human reduced to raw material, rows of thousands of human bodies in cold storage, suspended like frozen cadavers, some whole, some in pieces. He was told they were hopeless mental patients awaiting treatment. He no longer believed it. The horror escalated in 1979 when tensions allegedly boiled into violence. Accounts describe a conflict between human workers and alien overseers, sparked either by disagreements over weapons or by attempts to free captive humans. Security forces clashed, gunfire erupted, and in the chaos more than 80 humans were said to have died. This event became known as the Dulce War. Skeptics dismiss it as myth. Believers call it massacre. Costello later disappeared, his so-called Dulce papers providing photos, documents, even footage, though many doubt their authenticity, yet the imagery he described resonates with other testimonies. Phil Schneider, the geologist turned whistleblower, spoke of underground battles, of weapons that cut like light, of losing fingers in a firefight with alien beings. He too claimed thousands of experiments were underway below Dulce, that Nightmare Hall was not legend, but fact. Imagine the implications. Governments trading their citizens for technology, beings conducting experiments beneath American soil, thousands vanishing, written off as missing persons, but in truth, entombed in glass. The ethical breach is staggering. If Nightmare Hall was real, it would be the darkest chapter in human history. Not a laboratory, but a factory of suffering. Skeptics argue that such stories are too grotesque, too cinematic, too reminiscent of horror fiction. But the persistence of detail across testimonies fuels belief. Different sources, different years, same descriptions. Tanks, hybrids, screams, secrecy. Could so many unrelated people invent the same nightmare? Or were they describing fragments of something real, distorted but rooted in truth? Some researchers propose alternative explanations. Perhaps Dulce was never alien, only human. A covert government project testing genetic engineering, cloning, psychological warfare. Experiments so unethical they required cover stories of aliens to deflect blame. Yet if so, why the recurring imagery of non-human beings, of greys and reptilians working alongside humans? Could mass hallucination explain it? Disinformation campaigns? Or was the alien presence genuine? Whatever the truth, Nightmare Hall functions as a symbol. It embodies the ultimate fear that humanity is not in control, that our bodies and minds can be manipulated, that our leaders would consent to it. It is the inversion of Area 51. At Area 51, humans dissect aliens. At Dulce, aliens dissect humans. The reversal is what gives the legend its power. Consider the cattle mutilations of the 1970s. Ranchers reported precision cuts, organs removed, blood drained. No predator could do this. Government investigations offered no clear answers. For believers, these were practice runs, the same methods perfected in humans at Dulce. Hall is not just a room in a base. It is a story we tell about ourselves, about vulnerability, about betrayal. If the Hall exists, then our world is not our own. If it does not, then it remains a parable of how fear can create monsters beneath mountains. But remember the testimonies: workers who claimed to see hybrids, scientists who spoke of treaties, whistleblowers who died mysteriously after revealing secrets. The story of Nightmare Hall persists because it refuses to die. Whether true or myth, it demands attention. Somewhere in the deserts of New Mexico, under the Archuleta Mesa, legend says there are corridors filled with tanks, rooms of cold storage, and echoes of screams that no one above ever hears. Nightmare Hall may be folklore, it may be fabrication, but it may also be the most disturbing truth ever concealed. And if it exists, it changes everything we know about who holds power on Earth. They call it the Dulce War, a battle fought not in the skies or across borders, but underground, in the dark corridors of a base that officially does not exist. According to testimonies, the year was 1979. Tension had been brewing for months between human personnel and the alien overseers of the facility. The trigger, as the story goes, was a dispute over weapons. Humans wanted access to alien technology stored deep within Level 6. The aliens refused. The standoff escalated into a firefight that would allegedly leave 82 people dead. What makes the Dulce War so compelling is not just the number of casualties, but the nature of the participants. On one side were American security forces, including elite Delta units assigned to guard the collaboration. On the other side were alien beings, greys and reptilians, armed with weapons beyond human comprehension. Witnesses describe energy weapons capable of slicing through flesh, light beams that melted steel. Humans fought with rifles and explosives, but the odds were hopeless from the start. One whistleblower, Phil Schneider, claimed he was present as a contractor. He described drilling operations that broke into a cavern where alien forces were waiting. According to him, chaos erupted instantly. Schneider claimed he fired at least 2 shots before being struck by a beam weapon that left him severely injured and missing fingers. Skeptics dismiss his account as fabrication, citing inconsistencies in his biography. Yet the details he provided about underground bases, about firefights, about treaties, match stories told by others who never met him. Thomas Costello, the alleged security officer, offered a different perspective. He claimed a small resistance formed among human workers horrified by what they witnessed in Nightmare Hall. They decided to act, to free captives and confront the aliens. But when the rebellion broke out, the retaliation was immediate. Energy weapons flashed, alarms blared, smoke filled corridors. Costello described it as a massacre. According to him, scientists, guards, and even sympathetic reptilian workers fell. Bodies littered the halls. The war, if it can be called that, lasted hours, maybe less. Reports vary. Some say the fighting spread across multiple levels, from laboratories to storage bays. Others insist it was confined to a single wing. What remains consistent is the death toll. Dozens of humans wiped out in a battle buried in secrecy. Officially, no such event occurred. No records, no reports, no names of the dead. But believers argue that the absence of evidence is itself evidence of a cover-up. Families of missing workers were told their loved ones died in accidents or simply never told anything at all. Rumors suggest sealed coffins, anonymous burials, stories that did not add up. If the Dulce War was real, why cover it up? The answer lies in the alleged Granada Treaty. If the U.S. government had indeed signed,
Would expose the deal. It would reveal that citizens were traded, abducted, or worse, with tacit approval. To admit the war was to admit betrayal. And so, according to conspiracy lore, the event was buried just like the bodies beneath the mesa. Schneider later claimed that he spoke out to honor the dead. He said he could not stay silent knowing that colleagues had been slaughtered in secret. He went public in 1995, delivering lectures about underground bases, treaties, and the war itself. Months later, he was found dead in what authorities called suicide. To believers, it was execution, punishment for revealing forbidden truths. Costello also vanished. His alleged documents, the Dulce papers, surfaced, but their authenticity has never been verified. Some images were debunked, others remain unexplained. His fate is unknown. He simply disappeared, as if erased. What is chilling is how consistent the core narrative remains across accounts. A conflict in 1979, dozens dead, alien weapons, human betrayal, silence afterward. Skeptics argue the story is too fragmented, too contradictory. They point out that no verifiable names of victims have ever surfaced. They note discrepancies between Costello and Schneider's accounts, different triggers, different sequences. They ask, if 82 people died, where are the families demanding answers? Where are the records? But believers counter with examples of classified projects like MK Ultra, hidden for decades until exposed. They argue that secrecy is precisely why no evidence exists, that anyone who knew too much was silenced. Some even suggest survivors were relocated, identities erased, families deceived. The Dulce War is also referenced in alleged government documents leaked in the 1980s and 1990s. Some mention conflicts with non-human entities. Others hint at underground bases requiring extreme security after violent incidents. None name Dulce directly, but to those convinced, the connection is obvious. Then there is the physical evidence. Strange lights reported over Archuleta Mesa, military activity in remote New Mexico, cattle mutilations coinciding with the timeline, radar anomalies. Even if each is explainable alone, together they weave a tapestry too strange to dismiss outright. If the Dulce War happened, it represents humanity's first battle against extraterrestrial forces. A war fought not in open fields, but in silence, under the earth, hidden from the public. A war that governments deny, but that whispers of testimony keep alive. Imagine it. Soldiers firing rifles in narrow tunnels, beams of light cutting through concrete, screams echoing off steel walls. A war where humanity's survival was measured in seconds and defeat was inevitable. The legend of the Dulce War endures because it taps into primal fears. Fear of betrayal by leaders, fear of being powerless against superior beings, fear of hidden truths buried out of reach. People vanish without trace. Could families be silenced? Could an entire battle be scrubbed from history? Skeptics scoff, but history shows governments keep secrets, bury scandals, erase mistakes. Why not a war underground? In the end, the Dulce War is less about proof and more about possibility. If even fragments are true, then humanity has already fought and lost its first war against forces from beyond. And if the story is false, then it remains a parable of mistrust, of how fear and secrecy create monsters beneath our feet. But remember the date, 1979. Remember the number, 82. Remember the names never spoken. Because if the Dulce War happened, then our world is not as safe, not as human,
and not as ours, as we were taught to believe. The Dulce story does not end with the alleged war of 1979. If anything, that is where the legend truly begins. Because wars leave traces. Battles leave scars. Yet in Dulce, the scars are invisible, hidden beneath the desert, denied by every official channel. And so the mystery festers, growing larger with every decade of silence. In the years that followed, whispers of Dulce Base spread far beyond New Mexico. Researchers, journalists, UFO enthusiasts all converged on Archuleta Mesa, chasing the smoke of a fire no one could prove. Strange lights were reported above the mesa, darting across the night sky. Locals spoke of low humming sounds that seemed to vibrate through the earth. Cattle mutilations continued, their precision cuts and missing organs defying natural explanation. For believers, these were not coincidences, but echoes of activity beneath the ground. Skeptics argued the opposite. They claimed mutilations were caused by predators. Lights were misidentified aircraft. Sounds were nothing more than geological shifts. Yet, no skeptic has ever set foot beneath the mesa to prove it. The base, if it exists, remains sealed. And that is the genius of the Dulce myth. It cannot be disproved because it cannot be reached. Whistleblowers kept the flame alive. Paul Benowitz, whose receivers picked up strange transmissions. Thomas Costello with his alleged documents. Phil Schneider, scarred and broken, claiming he survived a firefight underground. Each told a piece of the story. Each paid a price. Benowitz lost his mind, consumed by paranoia, crushed under a campaign of disinformation until he died isolated. Costello vanished, erased from records, leaving only papers whose authenticity is debated to this day. Schneider was found dead, a noose of piano wire around his neck, officially ruled suicide but whispered to be execution. 3 men, 3 different fates, all bound by Dulce. Are they martyrs of truth or victims of delusion? That question divides the community even now. What cannot be denied is the pattern. Whenever someone pushes too close to Dulce, they break, vanish, or die. Coincidence or containment? Then there are the residents of Dulce itself, many of them Apache bound to the land for centuries. They tell stories of lights, of rumbling beneath the mesa, of helicopters flying without insignia. Some laugh off the tales as folklore. Others swear the ground itself feels wrong, as if hollow. Native elders speak of star people, ancient beings who dwelled underground long before humans walked the land. In their stories, Dulce was never ours. It was theirs. This, believers say, is the deeper truth, that the Granada Treaty was not an act of weakness, but acknowledgement. A concession to beings who claimed the land as theirs before history began. If that's true, then Dulce is not an invasion. It's an occupation, hidden in plain sight. The implication but traded. If alien experiments occurred, then the boundaries of science and morality were shattered beneath our feet. If a war broke out, then humanity has already faced a conflict it could not win. And if none of it is true, then Dulce remains a mirror reflecting our deepest fears of secrecy, power, and control. Skeptics dismiss the story as fantasy. They point out the lack of concrete evidence, the contradictions in testimony, the recycled imagery of forged documents. They argue that humans are simply not capable of keeping such a massive secret for decades. They call it modern mythology. But believers counter with history. MK Ultra was denied for years until documents surfaced. Area 51 was a myth until it was admitted. Black projects have always thrived in shadows. Why should Dulce be any different? And so the legend persists. Every decade brings new stories, photographs of strange craft near the mesa, rumors of underground tremors, reports of military roadblocks in remote desert paths. Each one fuels the fire. Each one keeps Dulce alive. In popular culture, Dulce has become a symbol of hidden truths, of nightmares buried by governments, of collaboration with forces we cannot control. It inspires books, films, and endless late-night discussions. But beneath the entertainment lies unease, because even skeptics cannot fully dismiss the possibility. What if even part of it is true? What if beneath Archuleta Mesa, experiments continue? What if human lives are still traded in silence? The Dulce myth endures because it is more than conspiracy. It is cautionary tale. It warns of what happens when secrecy collides with power, when fear eclipses morality, when survival demands compromise with forces we do not understand. 2,000 years ago, Pompeii showed us the wrath of nature. Dulce shows us the wrath of secrecy. One destroyed a city in a day. The other may be destroying trust for generations. Today, Archuleta Mesa looks peaceful, a flat desert ridge against the New Mexico sky. Tourists drive past, locals herd cattle, the mountain sleeps. But for those who believe, its silence is not peace. It is warning. They say the War of 1979 was only the beginning, that deeper levels were dug, that experiments became more advanced, that the treaty was never broken. If true, then somewhere beneath that mesa, lights still flicker, machines still hum, and humans still scream in soundproof chambers no one will ever hear. The Dulce mystery endures because it asks questions we cannot answer. What is buried beneath Archuleta Mesa? Who holds the truth, skeptics or believers? And most unsettling of all, if Dulce is real, then what else is hidden? How many other bases lie beneath deserts, mountains, or oceans, waiting to be uncovered? The final legacy of Dulce is not evidence or proof. It is doubt. Dulce haunts us, because whether it is myth or reality, it reminds us that beneath the surface of our world lies another world, one we are not meant to see, one that, if revealed, might unravel everything we think we know. So the question remains, is Dulce a hoax, a legend, a lie? Or is it the most terrifying truth ever hidden? No one can say for certain. And perhaps that is the point. Because sometimes the most powerful secrets are not the ones proven true, but the ones that leave us forever asking, what if?